The new Specialized Diverge STR has 20 mil of adjustable travel up front, 30 mil of rearward movement in the back, a whole lot of hype, and a big old price tag of $14,000. How does that feel in a gravel race? I came down here to Bentonville, Arkansas to do Big Sugar and find out exactly that. Flat number one, good times, great oldies. So there's a lot going on with the bike. You're probably familiar with the front Future Shock, which has been on the Diverge and the Roubaix endurance road bike for a while in Specialized line. But the big news is this crazy looking contraption at the rear where the seat post and the frame post move backwards, and there is a 3-step hydraulic damper built into the top tube. I want to tell you about the details of this, how it felt to ride. I want to talk about my luck with the parts, components, the gearing, and the tires on the sharp rocks down here in Arkansas, and some other bits of gear that I use, like the trusty Garmin Edge 830, a USWE pack that I used for the first time, and some other highlights and lowlights of Big Sugar in Arkansas. Compared to something like Unbound Gravel, where there is often, dozens of miles straight ahead and tons of visibility, Big Sugar was felt more akin to mountain biking. Yes, the road was a little bit wider than a single track trail, but just the constant curves and undulations made me very much appreciate having a Garmin, not so much to follow the route, which was helpful. There's a lot of volunteers there pointing out some of the key turns. Christy Moen, boss of Unbound Gravel, was there with a whistle and a flag. It's always fun to see so many people out on course, either riding the event or helping out with the event. But what I liked about having the course on my computer was just seeing how steep the approaching corners were. So that was definitely an appreciated thing. Plus having riders ahead calling out things. I saw more than a handful of riders well off the road having overcooked corners. A lot of loose gravel, a lot of chunky gravel, and it's certainly a good test ground for a bike that claims to be a full suspension gravel bike. Big Sugar was the concluding 6th event of the Lifetime Grand Prix series, which featured 3 gravel races, 3 mountain bike races owned by Lifetime with a $250,000 purse on tap. There was a 6-mile neutral, and it was one of those neutral sections where we were going 35 miles an hour. So a split came early, and many of us found ourselves well back of the fast kids. Now, I was hoping that a split would come before we got into the more technical bits, just because the more people that there are at a higher speed coming into tighter, looser technical areas, the higher the chances that someone's going to get sideways. So I got my wish. It just came a little earlier than expected. Enough yapping about the race. Tell us about the bike, Delaney. Okay, I will. The defining feature of the Diverge STR, Suspend the Rider, is the hydraulic damper that sits inside the top tube. There's a switch on top that goes from firm, medium, fully open, and that controls how much force it takes to move the post, which goes up to 30 mil at the rear. Riding around in Boulder, just on the roads, paved roads, dirt roads, a little bit of trail, I certainly played with all 3 settings, and the smoother the surface, the more the movement at the saddle felt kind of odd, because as the more it moves, the more the saddle tips up. Specialized recommends you start with the saddle tipped down so that when you sit on it and it sags in, it's level, which I did this, but nonetheless, when it's moving, the saddle angle moves, because unlike, say, a suspension seat post that has a 4-bar linkage to account for the movement, this is fixed at the top. So that was some movement that just felt weird to me, especially when fully open, when riding on surfaces that weren't super rough. How something feels JRA, just riding around, and how something feels in the heat of a big recreational event like Big Sugar, where there's tons of people, tons of rocks, you're having a hard time seeing, you don't know what you're feeling half the time. Those are 2 different things. So I was curious to see how this felt in the event. I was working my way up and down the compression settings. Like when we were on the road, when I was getting dropped early on, I had it in the firmer setting, and you could still feel a bit of movement, especially under hard power as my pedaling became less than smooth in the desperate situation. Most of the time on the gravel, which comprised 95% of Big Sugar, I had it in the fully open setting, and I could certainly feel it moving there, but the movement at the saddle was a little bit less annoying than it was just riding around, because often you're hitting bumps that you can't see that are coming, and having a bit of give was welcome. So the $1 million question, or in this case the $14,000 question, is it worth it? From my perspective, that is a hard position to defend. Yes, it works, it moves, and you can control the movement here. Is this fundamentally different or better than a suspension seat post? I was talking with a few riders during the race, one who mentioned, Cane Creek will sell you a suspension seat post with 35 millimeters of travel. You can adjust the movement with different dampers, certainly not on the fly, but you can put in different levels of elastomers. That'll run you about $250 and maybe 350 grams. You can put it on any bike. I would be curious to take the Pepsi challenge and try a Cane Creek and this, back to back, and not being able to see what I was riding, to see if I could tell the difference, because I do not think that I could. Oh, here comes the car. Now up front, the Future Shock is a much easier sell for me. I was talking to Neil Henderson of Wahoo at the start, who's ridden a bunch of different Specialized bikes, going back and forth between Rigid and the Future Shock. And the way he put it was it just reduces the jackhammer effect. Instead of going from a 10 on the jackhammer scale, it's more like an 8 or a 9. And I certainly found that to be the case. One thing I like about the Future Shock is that it just moves up and down without changing the angle of the bars or the hoods the way suspension stems do. So that to me is a plus. I've also heard from friends who have had Diverges and Roubaix for a long time, who have had to have the things warranted and replaced as they wear out. That just brings up another issue with complexity. The more moving pieces you have, the greater the chance that something is going to go sideways and need to be replaced. I certainly appreciated having a bit of give in the front, not just for the flat portions where it was rough, but in particular the descents when it was rattly and loose. It just adds to the feeling of control. Was I more in control? I have no idea. I had my foot out more than once in some of these corners, but I certainly wasn't wishing for a firmer setup up front. Other pieces of gear on the bike and how they fared. The locals, as I said, were not wrong about the rocks around here. I ended up with 4 flats. Flat number 1, good times. Great oldies. The rear was going soft and I stopped, could not find the hole for the life of me. I was like spinning the tire slowly by my ear and I think I would hear something, shh, no, that was a group going past. And I'd spin it some more, shh, no, that's just another group going past. Could not find a hole to plug, so just topped it off, rode for a bit, went down again. Flat number 2. 2 times. Again, spent minutes trying to find the dang hole. Could not find it. Used more of the CO2 to top it off. Rinse and repeat until it was finally, banging on the rim. So I stopped and put in a tube. Hello, Aerothon. I don't know how long this has been in my saddlebag. Hopefully it still holds. We'll see. Bummer. Wah, wah. Save some beer for me, huh?
Got it. Oh, hey, friend.
Oh, hey. Wait for me. For gravel, I definitely recommend bringing TPU tubes, which are made by a few different folks. Yes, they're expensive, but they are, half the weight and about 1/3 of the size of a normal Beetle tube, so you can just stick more in your saddlebag or wherever you're carrying your stuff. So I brought 2 and used 2. First a Schwalbe Aerothon, and then ended up with the distinctive orange Tubolite tube, which brought me back home to the finish, which was good because I was fresh out of everything. I was just running the stock Specialized Tracer Pro tires in 42. had them set at like the, the mid 30s, and more than a few times I thought, wow, this suspension seat post really is soft. It feels like my tire is soft. Oh no, that is a soft tire.
My tire's got a hole, but I don't know where. I'd roll a lot faster if it would hold more air. I'm all out of CO2s and I'm running out of tubes. Down here in Arkansas with them saggy tire blues. Wah, wah. Oh man, I just want to ride my bike. My tire doesn't want to be a tire.
I certainly was not the only one brought to the side of the road with a flat or leaking tire. It's all part of the fun of gravel racing, right? Stock configuration for gear. It's the Mullet. Got a 40 tooth front on the SRAM Red, which has a Quark power meter, which I very much appreciate. A bike that costs this much should absolutely come with a power meter. And then in the rear, you've got the 1050 cassette. I used the full range and was still looking for more. I talked to Keegan Swinson, who ended up second to his buddy Russell Finsterwald in the men's race. Keegan was running a 48 chainring on the 1050. I was thinking about that as I was creeping up a few of the double-digit percentage climbs in the 40-50 and still looking for more gear. So sometimes it's good to ask the pros for their gear and what they do, and sometimes it's a terrible idea because what they do and what we do are two different things. Another piece of gear I tried for the first time was the U-Sweet pack, the Swedish hydration pack that, as its strap says, there are no dancing monkeys. It's just a simple one clip piece to hold it on. I found it to be comfortable, nice, light, minimalist. I've been using the Camelback Chase vest for a while and found that to have too much going on. There's just like packs and straps and zippers and pouches and just unnecessary stuff. The U-Sweet, on the other hand, is just the super minimalistic approach of a pouch with straps to hold your hydration pack. This comes with a 2-liter Hydro pack. I stuck my mini pump in there. There's not a separate pouch, just put it in the same pouch with the bladder. That worked fine. Was happy to have that pump as I used it more times than I care to account for.
More CO2 would have been a good idea.
I also appreciate the rectangular hydration bladder, as that seems to be a little bit easier to clean than the Camelback, which is, I can never figure out how to get that thing to dry all the way. It's an awkward shape. So, little thing, but hydration packs are certainly something I appreciate having at gravel races. So I think U-Sweet is doing a great job. I started with that pack, 2 bottles, and didn't have to stop until like mile, I don't know, 70 or 80 or so, and then stopped twice. The top off bottles, Big Sugar very well supported with both the designated points and then a few pop-up spots like the Chamois Butter Crew was out there in the woods with hydration and bacon and all sorts of good vibes. So here's where I net out on this Specialized STR. I'm not against companies going for the pie in the sky, build a crazy concept bike. In fact, I think it's cool to see development and companies taking flyers. That is a positive thing. It might not be for everyone, it may not be for most of us, and the price certainly excludes most of us, myself very much included, but just the concept of building crazy things, I'm all for. Often those things, when scaled back, in terms of price or functionality, ends up being a positive thing for the bike industry at large. All that said, I find this bike to be a hard sell. It does work as advertised. There's plenty of movement that you can adjust, but it doesn't seem to be a huge step over a suspension seat post, which you could get for thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars less. So for me, whether or not you like how it feels or not, just the fundamental value proposition is not there. So price aside, if you are one of the very few, very lucky folks for whom this price tag does not cause your eyes to water. What makes a good bike is very much a matter of personal preference. For me, for most gravel events and most gravel riding, I like a carbon bike with a long carbon seat post. So there's a bit of flex, but not a lot of weight and not a lot of added complexity. Is that the best thing? I don't know, but that's just what I prefer. It's worth noting that Russell, a Specialized athlete, won Big Sugar on the Specialized, not the Diverge, but the Crux. Does that mean that the Diverge is a scam? No, it just means Russell, like many racers, prefers the lightest option out there. And the Crux, also not a cheap bicycle, comes in just over 15 pounds. Away from the race course, there are certainly benefits to this bike beyond the compliance. There's plenty of mounts for bags aplenty on the frame and on the fork legs. There's the integrated Swat Box, the storage hidden in the down tube. I'm curious to see what adoption will be like on this bike. I don't begrudge companies taking flyers on new designs or revamped old designs. Competition makes us all stronger, but I just cannot see the value proposition here, and I cannot recommend this for most riders. What I can recommend for all riders is coming down to Bentonville to ride bikes, particularly at Big Sugar, or just to enjoy the roads and trails in Northwest Arkansas. I've very much enjoyed my time here, and I'm looking forward to coming back. Thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, and thanks for keeping the conversation going in the comments below. Rubber side down, and I'll see you next time. Brief detour from the race, because this looks good. Right? Oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, much better.